Welcome everyone to Color Commentary. We are your Pauper commentators, Michael Pitchick and Adrian Gonzalez. How's it going, Adrian?
Pretty good, Mike. How about yourself?
Not too bad. It's pretty beautiful weather here. I've been enjoying myself. This weekend was pretty rough, but, is what it is.
You know what? I just checked Arkham's Astrolabe foils. I got them for $5. They are currently $10.50.
Oh boy. I think I saw someone playing some list running it in Modern as well.
Yes, it's being played in Modern.
We'll get into all that. But first off, we have a slightly modified from our usual upkeep. We are announcing today, officially in full broad view of the public, we are going to be sunsetting this podcast.
It's the end.
Yeah, it's been
3 years.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. We are going to be doing one more episode after this. That's going to kind of be a finale, wrap up. Let's look back on the good times. But the point is, the way we've decided to phrase this is that we're going on indefinite hiatus. We are not going to be making the podcast any longer, and we may return to it at some point in the future, but we don't want to put a date on it. And it really comes down to how we're feeling. But we'll get
the positive is we're keeping our community.
Yeah.
So we'll always be around in Pauper, and we'll always be around on our Discord server. Did we decide if we're letting other people join that?
I don't know. It's a call we'll make in a bit.
All right. Everything's really up in the air. The point is the show is ending. It's been a great 3 years. We're going to end at 160 episodes even. So it's going to be good.
Yeah. But
cue the montage.
I was going to say there may be some montagey aspects to the final episode. I don't know. I haven't decided on what we're going to do to send this thing off, but we are going to bring you one last episode because there is one big thing that happened while I was gone on vacation, or after we recorded the episode right before I went on vacation. We gotta talk about the unification of Pauper, because that is certainly a thing that happened.
Go out while you're on top.
Yeah. So Thursday before I left for vacation, so at the end of June, there was this huge announcement. It was I believe the entire block of the weekly MTG stream on Twitch, where they announced that they're going to be I guess at this point it's weird because I thought about all this stuff when it was a future tense, so bear with me, folks. They unified the two card pools, and this is something that I don't honestly know the first time we had asked for this to happen, but it's something that people have been yelling about for ages at this point. And for folks who are newer to the format, the issue was that for a long time, Pauper was any card that had been printed at common on Magic Online. And you wound up with this weird situation where some paper shops were running events where you could play all the paper commons as well. And they had different ban lists. And it was this whole big thing that was causing confusion. And then there was the whole Channel Fireball started running events at the Magic Fest. And each one of those, they had here's your actual card pool. I remember seeing an event that was actually had the entire card pool just printed out, and that's not a great way to express how a format legality works, in my opinion.
Nah.
Yeah, just not a really great place to be. But so they announced that they would unify it. There are still cards that are not available on Magic Online. A lot of the big ones are, though. And we're going to be talking tonight about some of the stuff that we think is good, some of the stuff we think is okay, and the large swath of stuff that is probably not good. So, Adrian, even though the show's ending, how do you feel about all this?
I think it's great. I think it's something that people have been clamoring for a long time. It's a very serious milestone on the path to bigger Pauper tournaments. Pauper was also sanctioned as part of this announcement. I don't remember if you just mentioned that or not.
I didn't.
Oh, well, guess what, everyone? Pauper is now officially sanctioned by Wizards. Does that mean we're going to see a huge uptick in Pauper GPs? Well, probably not. There's no vintage GPs, for example, and that's an officially sanctioned format. But it goes a long, long, long way to legitimizing the format, making it cohesive, and ultimately growing it. So it's kind of a great time to exit, actually, because it's like, well, our work here is done. Gush is banned. And Pauper is unified. What other battles are there left for our heroes to fight?
Yeah, there you go. There's a good way to think about it. But yeah, this is the combination of like simplifying the rules set or the legality set, and also sanctioning it. Oh, the one last part that we forgot about. They did ban 3 cards just right out of the gate. They immediately were like, all right, the 3 things that are getting the axe are Sinkhole, Hymn to Torok, and High Tide. So 3 things that I feel are pretty reasonable bans that a lot of people expected.
Yeah, same. I think some folks were probably expecting Desert or Goblin Grenade to be banned, but I don't really think they're a problem.
No. I think they did right by just going like, hey, like High Tide makes a really quick combo deck, because I have actually seen lists as to what that would look like, and it's a little terrifying getting to play familiars with none of the like splash color, and also getting some other pickups from this card pool is a very silly deck. But and then you have him and Sinkhole, both of which represent like somewhat outdated, unfun, quote unquote, mechanics. And I mean, Adrian, have you ever had a Hymn to Torok resolved against you?
No.
Really?
Not even in Legacy, I don't think. Which is actually kind of surprising, because the one Legacy GP I've played in was during the height of like Grixis Delver.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I don't think I ever got himmed.
Well, it feels pretty bad.
Oh no, I don't doubt it.
Yeah,
him's a great card. You know, I actually really like the Susan Van Camp art of the wolf for him. I'm a terrible person. I'm a trash person.
It's the Walmart T-shirt. It's the Walmart animal T-shirt.
That's why I like it. It's so good.
But yeah, so they banned that, and then they banned Sinkhole because it's cheap land destruction. It's debatable. That's the one that I think is the most debatable as to whether or not it was correct. I get why they did it, but I could also see the case for letting it exist in the format. But probably at the end of the day, better that they just kind of nip that one in the bud.
It feels like they banned a lot of the feels bad cards.
I think they banned 2 feels bad cards and 1 card that would legitimately cause a very powerful combo deck. I think High Tide would have actually been a problem. I think him and Sinkhole just feel bad, and that's a fine reason to get something out of a format. All right, so I kind of took extensive notes here, and we're kind of going to talk about some of the stuff that is out there that is now legal in our format that I thought was neat. And I kind of have this separated into like good stuff, okay stuff, and then the rest of the stuff. We're not going to go through every card. There are, I believe it was 400.
It was over 400.
It was over 400, yeah. That's the main point here. Like, it's an unreasonable amount of cards to talk about, especially when some of them are just vanilla creatures from Portal. But first off, we have Ashes to Ashes, which is 1 black for a sorcery. Exile 2 non-artifact creatures. You lose 5 life. So I like this. I'm not sure if it has a home, but it's a 2-for-1, right?
I think it has a home.
Okay.
I think it's fine in mono black. Back when we were still playing in paper together, Mike, we actually did not have this house band at Pat's because we did not use online legality there. We used very close to it, but Ashes to Ashes was legal. It was run as a one of, and when it was good, it was very, very good. But I think it actually needs 2 targets, so it's not always the best, and I don't think it's like always insane removal. But I think in the decks that play as a 1 of or a 2 of, I think it's fine. I think it's a great control card.
Yeah, and the fact that it is you are correct. It does require 2 targets. And the fact that like this is a good card and it is straight up dead against specifically Affinity. Like I guess you could keep it in during your Affinity matchup. But man, that feels dicey to me because it does eat
It's
ATOGs.
not dead. Yeah, it kills ATOGs, Carapace Forgers, Gear Seeker Serpents might make this card more relevant now that the deck's playing that. I mean, it's been a while to be fair, but back then it wasn't. So
Yeah, I just think this is good, and especially like in a deck where you have sort of incidental life gain, that 5 life isn't the end of the world. But yeah, I do think for what it's worth, this is a main deckable card, which is a bit of a rarity these days. Next up, you mentioned Desert. Why don't you tell the folks at home what Desert does?
So this card was actually also not banned at PAT, so I have played against Desert. I don't think it's a huge boogeyman like other people think it is. And it was also legal in the Card Kingdom's Rag to Riches series. It's a very slow and grindy card that basically punishes decks that play X1, so it's very good against, say, fairies. So much like Ashes to Ashes, the ideal home for this card is a control deck, but preferably one with not too much mana requirements because it actually doesn't tap for mana, which is its biggest downside.
It actually does. It just taps for colorless.
Why, you think I would know that?
I
stand corrected.
So it has this ability, tap, it deals 1 damage to target attacking creature. Activate this ability only during the end of combat step.
Right. So it's good against Delver and fairies in general. It's not good specifically against Ninja of the Deep Hours.
Yeah, that one's a little funky because you can't kill the thing that they're gonna ninjutsu. Because
you also can't kill the creature because it's back in their hand.
True, yeah. You can't get whatever they bounce back, and you need 2 of these to actually kill the ninja. But yeah, this is a super grindy, control-y card that punishes literally every X1, and if you can get 2 of these online, like all of a sudden life is just miserable for your opponent. That said, the creatures still get to hit you. Like,
yes. So that's another downside.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things that when the format was slower and
when Mike was a younger man,
I just feel like we've gotten to a point where there are enough decks in the format that aren't reliant on X1s 100% of the time, where Desert is not fast enough. Like, even though this is uncounterable removal for small creatures, I'm not sure that 1 a turn is going to be enough anymore. And the other deck I think that's being good against is Elves, and like, it's only okay there. I don't know, like, if you're dying to Timberwatch activation, you're dying to Timberwatch activation. This doesn't save you there. So, I think that this card is actually fine, and if someone can figure out a nice slow grindy deck that wants this effect, it'll feel fine there. Next up, we have another. This one actually was banned at the Rags to Riches tournaments. Goblin Grenade. So this is 1 red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this, sacrifice a goblin, and it deals 5 damage to target creature or player. It's probably any target at this point.
This card is good. This card was actually also not banned at PATS. Starting to think, but you know what? The format there was fine. Goblins, it turns out, like, just kind of isn't great. Although major props to Alex Ullman in the Pauper Premier League for piloting the deck the other night. Oh, by the way, the Pauper Premier League. We definitely should talk about that at some point today, Mike. I spaced out about it in the intro. But it's good. It's actually turned Goblins into a much better deck than it was. The Goblins, I think, was basically tier, 10. Now it's probably 1.5.
Yeah, so this just jamming a playset of this in your 75 just means that you have access to an extra 20 points of damage. And right now we're not seeing a huge pile of Delver, so you're less likely to get punished by Spellstutter Sprite, which is definitely the card that punishes this specific spell the most. Just being able to have like a naked Spellstutter and 2 for 1 your opponent, or I guess actually 3 for 1 your opponent, because you wind up with a creature at the end of all that. Like that's pretty brutal. But yeah, this is it's a very good card. Other people have talked about this in the past, like just getting to dome your opponent for 5 when you have like random dorks sitting around is a very powerful effect. What do we have?
Also,
what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was going to go on to the next card. You want to keep talking about Goblin
Oh,
Guardian?
no. Go ahead. Go. I was about to ask you to go on to the next one.
Well, Mind Freak. We've got Merchant Scroll, one in the blue, sorcery. You can get any blue instant and put it into your hand.
Yup.
Okay, good. I wanted to make sure it wasn't blue instant or sorcery. I'm pretty sure it was just instants.
Yeah. It is, I think, the narrowest tutor that we have.
A blue instant or interrupt, it said on the original printing. Interrupts, of course, no longer exist. But yes, so it is an extremely narrow tutor. But it is still good. In Vintage, it's obviously very good because you can get Ancestral Recall. In Pauper, the best card to get maybe would have been Gush, which is, of course, no longer in the format. I shudder to think of Gush and Merchant Scroll in the format, actually. Although maybe not. So I don't know. It could be Counterspell too. It would be very strong in the mono blue deck.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the fact that it gets Gush when you need Gush and it gets other stuff when you need other stuff. But it would have been very good.
But its power level is certainly reduced compared to formats like Vintage because, of course, you cannot get Ancestral Recall, which is really, Vintage, man, what a thing. And since it's so narrow, it's not, demonic tutor, you can get anything. It's probably just fine. I don't think it's amazing in the format, but I don't think it's bad either, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some decks eventually start playing it. What do you think, Mike?
I think I like it. I have a feeling that the card that this is going to get the most is going to be Ghostly Flicker.
Capsize.
Oh.
Ghostly Flicker.
I'm curious as to why you went to Capsize immediately.
Yeah, it just looks like kind of a win condition or I don't lose condition for some decks. But yeah, I could see Tron playing this because then you could get Capsize, you could get Ghostly Flicker, like you said, you could get Condescend. It actually is very versatile in the Tron decks.
And especially since we've been seeing that shift to the all blue mana base for Tron, like it does give you a little bit of incentive to run some more blue cards if you wanna jam stuff out of Merchant Scroll. Yeah, I think this card is completely reasonable. It's not going to break anything. We don't have a ultra reliable, super easy to reach a combo state version of familiars right now. So I think this is probably fine. So the big concern would be if we hadn't banned one of the familiars pieces and Merchant Scroll and High Tide. Just imagine that nightmare situation.
Dude, I'm imagining it, and I'm going to stop.
Yeah, getting them cold sweats running. But yeah, I think Merchant Scroll is a fine addition to the format. I'm not sure it has a home right now, but I would feel comfortable saying the first time this shows up in a list, it's probably going to be in a 75 that includes Ghostly Flicker. I just feel that in my bones. All right. Another useful addition that is admittedly more of a sideboard card. We now have red and blue elemental blasts. We have the full. You can run an entire playset. You can run an entire sideboard. Excuse me, that is nothing but pyro, hydro, and elemental blasts, and that's it.
And what do we think of that? I think it's interesting, but ultimately not important. I think it's great for price.
Yeah, I think it has two effects. First, price, like they are cheaper, and second, I have heard and seen a bunch of instances where people have shown up with these two paper events not thinking about it because they are almost, and I know because someone will leave a comment if I don't clarify, they are almost the same as Hydro and Pyroblast. They're subtle differences, but by and large, they're pretty much the same card, and I've definitely seen people like have to deal with judge calls because they sided in a card that is, up until recently, was not legal in the format. So I like what it does. I'm not sure if we really needed it, especially because unlike in Legacy, we don't have access to surgical extraction effects, where having a split of the two of them matters. So it just kind of is there. I guess if you want like the fourth blast of a color, or the fifth blast of a color, excuse me, like go nuts. You can do that now. What's the last one of our like good cards?
The last one we have is Tormod's Crypt. like you mentioned here, Pauper not super hurting for cards like this, but Crypt is good because it is free. Well, it costs 0 mana, I should say, so that's pretty interesting. I'd be curious to see if it gets played in Affinity, just because it's a free artifact. Why not? Not that graveyard decks are super, apparent or anything, but I don't know. I'd be interested in seeing it there.
I was gonna say I actually didn't even think about that. I don't mind that at all. Actually, that does make that is probably the best place for it to go. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But other than that, it's just more graveyard hate. You mentioned it here. Relic and Bomb are already really, really, really good. So it's going to be tough to make room for this card.
Yeah, the thing was, when I was looking at it as a card, I was like trying to figure out a home for it, because I was like, okay, so you don't play Relic in decks that care about your own graveyard, and you don't play Nihil Spellbomb in decks that can't produce black. So you need to be the ideal place for this, besides from the Affinity example you gave, is a deck that both cares about its graveyard and doesn't have the ability to produce black mana at any point. So I'm not sure what deck that is. Like maybe when it was more of a thing, like the Boros Bully style of like Boros mid-range decks, because you had all the flashback stuff. But even those, you were running enough Prophetic Prisms, or if you really wanted to play Nihil Spellbomb, you could. I don't know.
A lot of them are playing Mortuary Mire also.
That's true. Yeah, like they do have a actual way to just hard cast it off a land, or hard pay for the triggered ability on Nihil Spellbomb. Excuse me. All right. Yeah, like Tormod's Crypt. It's a reasonable sideboard option for graveyard hate. Moving into the slightly sketchier realm, let's talk about Felden's Cane. Let's talk about this horrible abomination of a card. So Felden's Cane is 1 generic mana for an artifact. You can tap it, exile Felden's Cane, shuffle your graveyard into your library. So let me tell you a little story here about an era where people were playing 100-card teaching decks with no win cons. And let me tell you about the fact that this lets you go down to 60 cards and still have no win cons. And just cast this and shuffle all your stuff in your bin.
Dude.
Technically, you're not incorrect.
Hey, not dying is living.
I would argue that living is not dying, but
hey,
point taken.
Potato.
Yeah, so I don't think that there's a deck that actively wants this, but I did want to bring it up because back when Teachings was just counting on running more cards, this was a pretty reasonable thing. I'm not sure if it is anymore, because we now have a Devious Cover Up, which showed up for a hot minute as the flavor du jour of not a win cons. But yeah, Felden's Cane certainly exists. What do we got next?
Up next, we've got Darkness, which is Black Fog. Did we need this card?
It's a Black Fog, right?
What else is there to say?
Yeah, it didn't exist before. It does now. I don't think there's a deck that really wants it, but if we get to the I'm trying to think of what aggro deck a mono black deck would want to have a silver bullet against. And that it couldn't already just go, okay, I'm going to run Pestilence and Crypt Rats and hope that I get there.
Yeah, I just don't see it getting played in Well, actually in black decks that have the Monarch, it's actually not that bad.
Oh, true, because you can use it to hang on to it.
Fog for one turn. I mean, that's part of what makes Strands so good, but like Strands is flashback.
Strands is also non-combat damage as well. Like you can pop a Strands in response to a burn spell.
That's true.
Fog's not a good card. I'm not sure if Fog in a color that doesn't usually get fogs.
Fog.
Yeah, actual factual Fog. Like, I'm not sure if this has a home, but it's a weird enough card that we needed to touch on it. Up next, we have a card that I'm willing to bet you may have never seen. It's Sunken City.
I actually own a copy of this card from the dark.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the ones that I had to do a double take on when I was looking through all these cards. So Sunken City is blue for an enchantment. The beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Sunken City unless you play blue. Blue creatures get +1/+1. Delver, maybe?
It's a good card. I've thought about it before I looked it up, as always an uncommon. But yeah, it doesn't seem bad. Like you mentioned here, it sucks that it has not cumulative upkeep, but what's it called?
Just regular upkeep.
Blue. Yeah, just upkeep. You have to pay 2 blue, which in a deck like Delver is kind of tough because you want to be able to keep open like Counterspell. But I don't think you play this on turn 2, right? You play this on like turn 4 or 5 when you've had some time to develop your mana out. And so you can play it, and it doesn't. Maybe the 2 lands don't matter a whole big lot. It's pretty steep. It's a pretty steep cost, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets played as like a 1/of.
Yeah, and just like turning all your fairies into like 2/2s, like that feels fine. Like hitting a fairy miscreant and drawing a card and having a 2/2 for 1 mana, or I guess quote unquote 3 mana if you want to get technical. That honestly feels okay. Doesn't feel great, but it feels fine. Yeah, I could see this also being just like a sideboard card for them to kind of break parity in a mirror. Oh, no, it doesn't break parity in a mirror.
Yep, unfortunately not.
Yeah, because it is blue creatures, not blue creatures you control. I don't know, like, I could see there being situations where instead of being sort of more of the control tempo sort of game plan, if they want to get more aggressive, having something like Sunken City does allow them to have their threats be a little bit more potent without having... Actually, here's a good question for you. Is this better than Bone Splitter in Mono Blue Delver?
That's a really tough question for me to answer. Bone Splitter doesn't have upkeep costs.
Bone Splitter doesn't have upkeep costs. You do have to pay if the stuff dies.
But it only buffs 1 creature.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you're at 3 creatures or... Yeah, okay. This is a really difficult thing to actually qualitatively say which one of them is better, but I can't help but look at this thing and think, like, a decent amount of the time Bone Splitter is just going to be better than this.
Yeah.
If for nothing else than, like, you get to do other things with your mana on most of your turns. I don't know. Yeah. Sunken City's a weird one. If it sees play,
hard to evaluate.
If it sees play, I think the only place I would expect to see it is something like Mono Blue Delver or like the Fairies lists, that sort of stuff. All right, what do we have up next here?
Mystic Remora, which I only know mostly as a vintage card. For those of you who don't know Mystic Remora, I have to look up the wording on it. But it basically lets you draw extra cards. So hold on, let me read the original text and then I'll read the Oracle text.
Oh boy.
Cumulative upkeep 1. Whenever target opponent successfully casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. The player may pay 4 to counter this. Actually, that's not too bad. Yeah, so cumulative upkeep 1. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 4. So,
which they're never doing.
It's good in vintage. Ostensibly, it's good in vintage. Don't know what percentage of decks play. I know LSV likes the card. But
if your opponent has 5 Moxen in their deck,
yeah, Moxen change like everything.
Yeah, this is a weird one because it's got a high power ceiling, and also the fact that like it mostly sees play in formats with very fast mana to them. Because I noted here only other place I've ever seen it played extensively is competitive EDH circles.
It looks
where
like it's. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
go ahead.
It looks like it's already seen play in Tron and WUR, which is Familiars by 420 Dragon.
Huh. As a sideboard card?
Oh shoot! I already closed the window. Yes, as a sideboard card, and actually, its price has spiked. It is now a $5 card.
Yes, it's been a pricey one for a minute now. I guess that actually does make sense with the number of Arkham's Astrolabes running around.
I gotta go find my Mystic Remorse. I have a ton of these.
There you go. Get that that hashtag MTG finance life. But yeah, like there's a couple of decks in this format that are just jamming 4 Prophetic Prisms and 4 Arkham's Astrolabes. That's actually a decent amount of hits. Like, they're not Moxen, but you're still going to draw a good chunk of cards. Okay, yeah, I can see Mystic Remora being a sideboard option at the bare minimum.
Well, a lot of people are not going to be playing it. Do you know how much Mystic Remora is on Moto? It is 14 tickets.
What?
Yep. Well, 1366. I rounded up.
That's pretty wild. I did not know
last
that.
week it was like 3.
Huh. Well,
or right before the announcement, I mean.
Look at that. All right. Next up, we have a weird inclusion here. So, in legalizing all of the cards that were ever printed at Common, there's a couple of weirdo stragglers out there, and one of them is Forked Bolt. So Forked Bolt, for reasons unbeknownst to I think everyone outside R&D, was reprinted in a dual deck as a common.
Speed versus Kenning.
No, we've done this before. I'm getting like the biggest deja vu. It's Zendikar versus Eldrazi.
Okay, whatever. You're right.
I think those were in like close to a calendar year from one another.
Yeah, and I've noticed the cards you're comparing it to, Twin Bolt, Strander's Pyrohelix, and Fire Ice, those all cost 2 mana.
Those all cost 2 mana. They are instants.
Forked Bolt costs R and is a sorcery.
Yeah. So, you know, we talked about Ashes to Ashes earlier as like a 2-for-1. This is a much more conditional 2-for-1, but it has the flexibility of like, okay, I'm going to kill 1/2 toughness thing, or I attacked in, stuff has damage marked on it, I'm going to like make something into a trade now and ping you for 1. I mean, we've seen these cards before. I'm just not convinced that the 1 mana cheaper is actually worth the difference of not being an instant. I think that the instant speed interaction is much more key on the other cards like Pyrohelix, Twin Bolt, Fire Ice, all those. That's my personal take on it. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
I think the instant's probably better. Fire Ice just has so much versatility also.
All right, yeah. I think that's a fair take. It's a weirdo oddball one, but it's here, and go forth and play around with it if you so choose. What do we have next?
This one's Ashnod's Altar, which I am surprised that you put in the maybe column.
So I put this in the maybe because I don't know what you do with it.
So Ashnod's Altar is a very powerful combo piece, originally printed in Antiquities. It says, sacrifice one of your creatures, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool.
Yeah, I'm just... Is there a combo with this in Pauper that I just don't know about?
The immediate thought is Zuberas.
Okay. But
I'm just Mike, you asked, I am telling you.
I just don't know if that's better than just playing stuff like Viscera Seer. Is this
to add mana?
Is this one of those cases where I just don't understand combo decks again? Is that what this is?
No, I know what you mean, Mike. It's the same problem we have with Storm. You know, you can do all this stuff and make all this mana, but what do you do with it? Pauper doesn't have a lot of payoffs. Ashnod's Altar, though, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not a sleeper. The effect is very powerful.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that analysis. Like, I don't see where the application is, but I can see there being one.
Yeah. What's up
Okay.
next?
Give me a second here. Up next, we have Gaia's Touch, which, boy howdy, this is another. This is a reader, especially because there is actually an online printing of this one. Gaia's Touch is green for an enchantment. You may play an additional land during your turn if that land is a basic forest. And how on earth does the Master's Edition not have the correct wording? Because I'm looking here and it looks like the Oracle text, it's an activated ability. 0, you may put a basic forest card from your hand onto the battlefield. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery and only once each turn. Okay, so you get an extra land drop if it is exactly a basic forest. And then it also has the activated ability, Sacrifice Gaia's Touch, add green. I have no idea where on earth this would go. The only thing
the mono green ramp deck.
Yeah, that's the only place I could possibly see this working. But boy howdy, that magical text of you may play another land each turn is, I think, powerful enough that you can't really ignore it. And boy howdy is the art on this one.
I just sent you the hell art.
The art on this is really something else.
It's grim. It's grim. What is going on?
I don't know, man. Mark Poole is like a classic Magic artist, but
why is the guy in Ancestral Recall screaming?
I mean, that one you can at least chalk up to it being early, but Mark, my man.
He's not screaming. He's recalling.
Yeah, my main thing with this is it's real weird. Mark, man, you've done some great art for Magic over the years. This one's a little out there for me. But yeah, Gaia's Touch, if you're still hanging on to dreams of ramping into fair creatures in mono green, go for it. Have fun. What do we have next?
Well, Mike, I'm glad you asked. Up next, we have Breath of Life and False Defeat. They are both 4-mana reanimation spells in white. I think Breath of Life might be white 3 and False Defeat. Are they both white 3?
They're both white 3. They're functional.
Okay, yeah, I'm thinking of Resurrection.
Which we do have in this format already.
And actually, now there's kind of a white reanimator deck because now there's 3.
So, okay. So
is there a black-white reanimator deck? A white-red reanimator deck even?
So that's what I was going to say. White doesn't have a good way to get cards into the bin. So
You'd have to play, like looting.
I think you have to be on looting. What is the biggest, dumbest dork that you can reanimate that isn't an Eldrazi? Like, is there some stupid, massive monster at like 8 CMC in white?
I don't think in white, but I thought of Dreadmaw as a kind of a meme.
I think
the Eldrazi is just the best card, right? It has to be.
I have to imagine it is like oh boy, yeah. No,
we talked about this before.
It substantially is in white. Oh man, can I interest you in Yoked Plowbeast? Actually, Yoked Plowbeast is a 5/5 for 7 with cycling of 2, so you can actually put this one into the bin on its own. I wouldn't recommend playing this as your payload for Reanimator, but it does exist. And then there's Ivory Giant, which is 7 mana for a 3/4 that when it ETBs, you tap all non-white creatures.
It's not bad. It's not great.
It's a 3/4, man.
It's pretty bad.
Like this thing gets outclassed by just like everything in Affinity. That's kind of rough. But yeah, I think like I don't think these are good in like the literal sense of the word, but I think it's interesting that we now have 4 different reanimation effects. I really wish that they'd given us Zombify at some point, which is just this in black, which has bafflingly always been an uncommon. I would love to have that effect at common so that there would be some level of redundancy in like the more traditional black-red build of Reanimator.
Yeah.
All right. The rest of the cards, there's a lot of them. I'm sure you have pet cards in there. Most of the rest of the cards
Draft
that just
is
got
restoration.
Draft is Restoration was actually already in the format. It got included as a promo.
Rip.
I hate to be that guy, but
You're being that guy.
I'm always being that guy. The rest of the cards that they added to this format, by and large, I'm sorry if I missed one of your favorites, most of them ain't good. They're like 400 cards, maybe 15 of them are playable, and some of them are dicey at best. So this is still, like, I don't want to belittle the fact that this is still a good thing, and I'm happy for it, but a large majority of the cards that are now legal as a result of specifically this announcement are never seeing play. One other thing that is worth mentioning, there are a bunch of cards from this newly legal list that aren't actually in Moto, which is a little bit awkward.
It's the reverse problem.
It's the reverse problem, but they during I watched the stream live, and one of the things that they brought up was the example of Palace Jailer in Legacy, where Palace Jailer put up results in a paper event and wound up getting ported to Mitgo shortly afterwards because people were like, hey, this card is good in Legacy, I'd really like to play it. So I'm not advocating that, you go out of your way to harass WotC staff on Twitter, but maybe if there's a card that you really want to play test that isn't on Mitgo right now, nicely worded email or tweet could potentially get that moving. But yeah, I think that's the only downside to this whole rollout of this announcement, is that some of the cards just straight up aren't available, and that kind of sucks. But by and large, most of the ones that don't exist on Moto aren't great anyway, so don't worry about it. All right, you mentioned it way back. Do you want to quickly do a little shout out to the Pauper Premier League?
Oh yeah, Pauper Premier League. So
week 1 happened.
You go ahead and do it. I'm about to sneeze.
All right. So week 1 of the Pauper Premier League happened. And I know Alex listens to the show. Alex is a friend of mine, but
not me though.
But I was legitimately blown away by the production value. They had some technical hiccups, but I was really impressed when I saw the stream. There was definitely a part of me that was like, oh wow, this is actually pretty professional, because we had heard about this idea way back in the day when it was being brainstormed, and I was like, yeah, that'll be cool, but the production side of stuff is intensive. Knocked it out of the park. I was super impressed by it, and it was really enjoyable. Friends of the show, Alex and Kendra, were on there last week, and they both made a reasonable showing, but that is broadcasting on Thursdays. A little bit on the late side of things. It actually ran. I missed the end of it because I had to go to bed. So yeah, definitely go check them out. It is a really enjoyable stream. Plenty of fun. Really enjoyable host. Lots of actual pros out there who are playing, and it's super neat to hear their takes on the format. So yeah, definitely go out and support that and help continue to bring good content into Pauper. That's all I'm going to say on the topic of the Premier League. And before we wrap up for this penultimate of episodes, Adrian,
what's up, Mike?
Let's talk a little about Arkham's Astrolabe. You mentioned it in passing. Okay.
So, well, I did I say it on? I can't remember if I said in the pre-show of this show. That's another podcast's problem. But all right, let's get into it. Arkham's Astrolabe costs snow. So it's a 1-mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and you can filter mana with it, just like Prophetic Prism. It's basically Prophetic Prism, except it costs 1 mana instead of 2. Just has to be snow mana. This has radically changed the format. Most decks now are just running Snow Basics because they can also run Arkham's Astrolabe. It's making mana bases much more consistent, and it is homogenizing the mid-range decks, would you say?
So it's this weird effect
popular
of
players finally have great fixing.
Yeah. The thing that I really want to liken it to, and jokes, it's Pauper Deathrite Shaman. So a couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago at this point, there was like a period in Legacy where Deathrite Shaman was everywhere, and
you could play extremely greedy 4-mana decks like with Leovold and Red.
Yeah, like you wound up with these just insanely greedy decks because there wasn't anything to, like, even with Wasteland and stuff in the format, like there wasn't an effective way to punish them. Like their greed was still better for them than your hate was for that, than your hate was detrimental for them. And it kind of led to this weird state where, like, it wasn't everyone was playing a single deck, but you sort of saw like a level of like, okay, cool, like these cards, like it's a homogenization of like card selection more than actual literal like archetype. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing now, where it's like, I'm just going to put in Astrolabe, some way to like recur Astrolabes or flicker them or what have you, and we'll figure something out. Like, and it also lets you like do silly things. Like the deck that took down the challenge this week is just running a main deck Weather the Storm. You know, the storm card that gains you 3 life for each instance? Because it's free. Like that green, like having a green card in your main deck of a deck that runs 0 lands that produce green is just free. And it's super bizarre for me to look at a Tron list that is almost 5 color. Didn't quite hit the black splat. Oh no. We got Jendrova Horror. Never mind. We're full 5 color. That runs 10 blue lands, 1 black land that's mainly there for the utility. It's Mortuary Mire, and a bunch of colorless lands, and this is a reasonable mana base. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird place to leave the format as content creators because stuff is really bizarre right now. And
bizarro.
Yeah, I don't want to. The thing is, I don't want to say here like it should be banned, but this is showing concerning signs and should be monitored. That's what I'm saying. Right now, no one has figured out a good way to not just say, oh, well, greed is good. I'm going to play a bunch of Arkham's Astrolabes and Prophetic Prisms. Right now, those are just... That is one of the premier strategies, and the metagame has not had time to shake out. I don't think that arguing to remove this card from the format right now is the right thing to do, but I do think that it should be monitored carefully moving forward because, boy howdy, this has a lot of potential for things to get pretty weird.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, like just the sheer number, like looking at this challenge, the sheer number of decks that MTG Goldfish has no idea how to categorize. Like, just like every color except black, just like 4 color piles are becoming a reasonably common thing. So keep an eye on it. Don't be surprised if this becomes the next hot button card, but we're just here. We're saying this. Try to think of ways to beat this if you're not playing it, or start playing it and figure out ways to beat the decks that are trying to beat you on this. It's the cycle of a metagame. This is... I just think that at this point, this is the hot card, and the next few months are going to be determined by where it falls.
Yeah.
All right. You got anything else on Arkham's Astrolabe?
Nope. I'm going to take us out of the show for the penultimate time.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you by the support of our patrons, especially Enrique C. Enrique has been listening to us I think he may have been our first subscriber. I legitimately think that.
So I wanted to make sure that we thanked Enrique because this guy has been there, if not from day one, real close. So thank you, Enrique.
He was the first guy to like add us on Twitter.
He's
really nice guy, really stand-up guy.
Really honestly cares about the format, and I do, like, I'm not trying to get all misty-eyed here, but thank you, Enrique. You have been one of the biggest sources of support along the way.
Thanks, Enrique, from Adrian as well. I would say you can continue to support us just like Enrique, but that option is going to go away pretty soon. So thank you, everyone. Check below this video or description of this podcast for details on where to find it. I'd like to remind you that, I'll still take that review if you're going to give me a review because it boosts our visibility, and I won't let Mike let the domain go away.
Don't worry, I won't.
It'll be around forever, or at least until the robot apocalypse. If you have Well, this line doesn't make a lot of sense either. If you got a deck listing idea for a topic, you can contact us one last time via our website, or you can email us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. Special thanks to my LGS Pets Games, Mike's LGS JP Comics, and of course, L. You can find our theme song Quantitative and other great tracks over at soundcloud.net/ELLELLELL. I ran into him the other day. He's still making music. He said, I told him what song we used for the show, and he said, I don't remember making that song. And I said, okay, no problem, dude. Until next week for the last time, this is Adrian and Mike, and we are signing off for Color Commentary.